The massacre at Haven's Rest. The morning sun cast golden rays across the fertile valleys of Haven's Rest, a human colony that had become the pride of the Outer Rim territories. Children laughed as they played in the carefully tended gardens while their parents worked in the research facilities that dotted the landscape. The settlement housed 57,000 souls, all dedicated to pushing the boundaries of agricultural science and terraforming technology. Dr. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the Central Research Station, watching his daughter, Emma, chase butterflies through the experimental wheat fields. At 8 years old, she had already declared her intention to become a xenobiologist like her father. The thought brought a smile to his weathered face as he turned back to his work on symbiotic crop enhancement. "Another successful harvest projection, Marcus?" called Dr. Sarah Kim from across the laboratory. Her team had been working on atmospheric processors that could transform barren worlds into garden paradises. Haven's Rest served as their testing ground and their greatest success story. "Better than projected," Webb replied, checking his data screens. "The yield improvements are exceeding our wildest expectations. Earth Command will be pleased with these results." Neither scientist knew that high above their peaceful world, sensors belonging to the Velkari Empire had been monitoring their progress with growing irritation. The Velkari considered themselves the supreme intelligence in this sector of the galaxy, having conquered 17 species over the past 3 millennia. Their crystalline forms and advanced technology had made them virtually unstoppable. High Commander Zethara floated in his command chamber aboard the dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, his faceted form pulsing with indignant purple light. The holographic display before him showed detailed scans of Haven's Rest and its rapidly advancing human technology. "These mammals dare to establish colonies in our expansion zone," he declared to his assembled officers. "Their agricultural advances threaten to make our food synthesis technology obsolete. This cannot be permitted." Sub-Commander Vexhall, a younger Velkari with ambitious yellow striations across her crystalline surface, leaned forward eagerly. "Shall we demand their immediate withdrawal, High Commander? Surely they will see reason when faced with our superior firepower." Zethara's form shifted to contemptuous red. "Reason? These are humans, Vexhall. Their species has shown nothing but stubborn defiance since they first crawled from their primitive world. No. We will make an example that the entire galaxy will understand. Haven's Rest will serve as a demonstration of what happens to those who challenge Velkari supremacy." The attack began at dawn on what the colonists had planned to be their harvest festival. Velkari warships materialized from hyperspace without warning, their sleek forms blotting out the morning sun. The first energy salvos struck the communication arrays, cutting Haven's Rest off from the outside galaxy before anyone could send a distress call. Webb had just enough time to push Emma behind a reinforced storage unit before the research station exploded around them. Through the smoke and flames, he could see the Velkari ships methodically destroying every structure, every vehicle, every sign of human presence. There was no demand for surrender, no attempt at communication. This was not conquest, but annihilation. "Daddy, what's happening?" Emma's voice was small and terrified as the building shuddered under repeated impacts. "Stay down, sweetheart," Webb whispered, pulling her closer as debris rained around them. "Everything's going to be okay." But Marcus Webb was a scientist, trained to observe and analyze. Through the shattered windows, he could see Velkari ground troops moving through the settlement with methodical precision. They weren't taking prisoners or securing resources. They were ensuring that nothing and no one survived. The massacre lasted 18 hours. When the Velkari ships finally departed, Haven's Rest had been reduced to smoking craters and twisted metal. Not a single human remained alive to tell the tale of what had happened. The Velkari believed they had sent a clear message about the price of challenging their authority. They were wrong. 3 days later on Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the sterile white chambers of the Prometheus Research Facility, buried 3 kilometers beneath the mountains of Colorado. Her weathered face showed no emotion as she reviewed the final sensor readings from Haven's Rest, transmitted by an automated probe that had arrived too late to witness anything but the aftermath. 57,412 confirmed dead, reported Director James Harrison, his voice heavy with grief and rage. Complete orbital bombardment followed by systematic ground extermination. No survivors, no prisoners taken. Chen's hands clenched into fists behind her back. She had known many of the researchers on Haven's Rest personally. Dr. Webb had been a student of hers at the Naval Academy before choosing civilian research over military service. His daughter Emma had sent her drawings of alien butterflies just last month. "What's the status of Project Starfall?" she asked quietly. Harrison hesitated. "The technology is theoretical, Admiral. We've run simulations, but we've never tested it on this scale. The energy requirements alone—" "Doctor," Chen interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in 3 major conflicts. "They murdered children. They turned a peaceful research colony into ash because our agricultural advances made them feel threatened. How theoretical is too theoretical?" The director understood. Project Starfall had been humanity's most classified research program, born from discoveries made in the outer rim about the fundamental nature of space-time itself. While other species focused on bigger guns and faster ships, human scientists had been asking different questions about the nature of reality itself. "We'll need 6 months minimum to prepare the fleet modifications," Harrison said finally. "The quantum resonance chambers alone will require—" "You have 3 weeks," Chen cut him off. "Whatever resources you need, whatever personnel, whatever budget. Authorization level Omega Black. The president has already signed off on unlimited funding." Harrison swallowed hard. Omega Black authorization hadn't been used since the Titan colony crisis 60 years ago. It meant that as far as the government was concerned, humanity was at war, and conventional rules no longer applied. "Admiral," he said carefully, "once we deploy this technology, there's no hiding what we're capable of. Every species in the galaxy will know that humans can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The political ramifications—" Chen turned to face him fully, and Harrison was struck by the cold fury in her eyes. "Good," she said simply. "Let them know. Let them all know what happens when someone murders our children." As news of Haven's Rest spread through the human colonies, rage and grief transformed into something far more dangerous: unified purpose. Scientists abandoned their research to work on weapons projects. Diplomats withdrew from peace negotiations. Colonial militias began training for war. But the most significant changes were happening in the classified laboratories where humanity's greatest minds worked on projects that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. The quantum manipulation technology that had made Project Starfall possible was about to be unleashed upon an unsuspecting galaxy. High Commander Zethara, celebrating what he considered a successful demonstration of Velkari power, had no idea that he had just signed his entire species' death warrant. The humans were coming, and they were bringing weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves. In the depths of space, automated factories began producing components for technologies that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Quantum computers calculated trajectories that bent through dimensions most species didn't even know existed. And deep in the Prometheus facility, Admiral Chen stood before a holographic display of the Velkari home system, planning the most devastating response in galactic history. The massacre at Haven's Rest had lasted 18 hours. The Velkari Empire had perhaps 18 days left to exist. The Phantom Fleet High Commander Zethara basked in the glow of approval from the Velkari High Council as he delivered his report on the Haven's Rest operation. The crystalline chamber resonated with harmonious frequencies as the council members expressed their satisfaction with the decisive action against human expansion. "A perfect demonstration of Velkari superiority," declared Supreme Chancellor Morthek, her ancient form shimmering with golden satisfaction. "No doubt the humans will abandon their territorial ambitions now that they understand the consequences." Zethara's confidence radiated through his crystalline matrix. "Indeed, Supreme Chancellor, our intelligence networks report widespread grief and confusion among human colonies. They lack the technological capacity to threaten us directly, and their diplomatic overtures have always emphasized peace over conflict." What Zethara didn't know was that human intelligence had been systematically feeding the Velkari exactly the information they wanted to hear. For decades, Earth's spy networks had carefully cultivated the image of humanity as a peaceful, technologically inferior species more interested in farming and exploration than warfare. The deception was about to end. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Endeavour, humanity's first ship equipped with Project Starfall technology. Around her, the most advanced vessel ever constructed by human minds hummed with power that seemed to bend reality itself. The ship's hull was composed of metamaterials that existed partially outside normal space-time, making it simultaneously there and not there. "Jump calculations complete, Admiral," reported Captain Torres from the navigation station. "We're ready to execute the first phase." Chen nodded grimly. "Remember, people, we're not just fighting for revenge. We're establishing the new rules of engagement for anyone who thinks human lives are expendable. Make every shot count." The Endeavour activated its quantum displacement drive, and reality folded around it like origami. Where conventional faster than light, travel moved ships through hyperspace. Project Starfall technology simply erased the distance between 2 points. One moment the ship was in Earth orbit, the next it materialized in the heart of Valkyrie space, completely bypassing their early warning systems. The Valkyrie detection grid registered nothing. How could it? The sensors were designed to detect ships moving through normal space or hyperspace. They couldn't detect something that had simply chosen to exist in a different location without traveling there. Sub-Commander Vexhal was reviewing patrol schedules when her crystalline form suddenly darkened with alarm. "Hi, Commander," she transmitted urgently. "We're receiving impossible sensor readings from the core worlds. There appears to be a ship of unknown configuration in orbit around Velkara Prime." Zethara's attention snapped to the tactical displays. The readings made no sense. The vessel appeared to be roughly the size of a heavy cruiser, but its energy signature was completely unlike anything in their databases. More disturbing, it had appeared without any hyperspace distortion or subspace wake. "Impossible," he declared. "No ship can simply appear in our most heavily defended system without triggering our detection networks." Even as he spoke, more contacts began appearing throughout Valkyrie space. Not the massive invasion fleet he might have expected, but individual ships materializing in precise locations above major population centers, military installations, and industrial complexes. Each one appeared instantly without warning, without any sign of how they had arrived. "How many vessels?" Zethara demanded. 17 confirmed contacts, High Commander, all showing similar energy signatures, all of unknown design. Zethara's form shifted to battle-ready crimson. "Activate all defense fleets. I want those ships destroyed immediately." The Valkyrie response was swift and overwhelming. Thousands of warships converged on the mysterious human vessels, their weapons charging as they prepared to demonstrate why the Valkyrie Empire had never been successfully invaded. Admiral Chen watched the approaching Valkyrie fleet with satisfaction. "Phase 2, Captain Torres. Let's show them what humans learned while they were busy being arrogant." The Endeavour shimmered and suddenly wasn't there anymore. The Valkyrie weapons fired at empty space while the ship rematerialized 300 kilometers away, completely unharmed. Across the star system, the other human vessels performed the same impossible maneuver, blinking in and out of existence faster than Valkyrie targeting systems could track. "Report," Zethara commanded, as his forces fired uselessly at targets that refused to remain in one place long enough to be hit. "The enemy vessels appear to be utilizing some form of quantum phase shifting," Vexhal reported, her analytical protocols struggling to process the data. "They're not moving through space in any conventional sense. They're simply ceasing to exist in one location and existing in another." The human ships began their counterattack, and the Valkyrie learned what terror truly meant. Instead of conventional energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, the human vessels fired something that defied classification. The weapons appeared to be pure mathematics given physical form, equations that rewrote local reality according to human specifications. When a Valkyrie destroyer was struck by one of these reality-altering projectiles, it didn't explode or break apart. Instead, the fundamental forces holding its atoms together simply stopped working. The ship dissolved into component elements that dispersed harmlessly into space, as if it had never existed at all. "Impossible," Zethara shrieked as he watched his most powerful warship simply cease to be. "This violates every known law of physics," Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos as her communication systems linked directly to every Velkari command frequency. The translation was perfect, the tone utterly calm and professional. Velkari vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. You are ordered to cease all hostile actions and prepare to receive terms for your unconditional surrender. Zethara's crystalline form blazed with indignant fury. Impossible. We are the Velkari Empire. We do not surrender to inferior species. Inferior? Chen's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. High Commander, you just watched 17 human ships eliminate 300 of your finest warships without sustaining a single casualty. Your weapons cannot hit targets that exist outside conventional space-time, while our weapons rewrite the fundamental laws that hold your ships together. In what way are we inferior? The truth was beginning to dawn on Zethara, but his pride refused to accept it. What do you want? He demanded. Justice, Chen replied simply. You murdered 57,000 civilians on Haven's Rest. Men, women, and children who had never threatened your empire, never raised weapons against your people. They were scientists and farmers, teachers and artists. You killed them because their research threatened your technological supremacy. They were trespassers in Velkari space. They were in unclaimed territory, establishing a peaceful colony dedicated to agricultural research. Your own territorial claims for that sector were filed but never enforced. Under Galactic law, Haven's Rest was a legitimate settlement. Chen's voice hardened. But legal technicalities aside, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because humans prefer peace, we're incapable of war. You confused our restraint with weakness. That was your first mistake. The second human transmission came not as words but as pure information, somehow downloaded directly into every Velkari consciousness in the star system simultaneously. It was a complete technical analysis of the quantum manipulation technology humanity had developed, explained in mathematical terms that left no room for doubt or denial. The Velkari had spent millennia perfecting conventional weapons and faster-than-light travel. Humans had spent the last century learning to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself. They could phase ships in and out of normal space-time, rewrite the laws of physics on a local scale, and project their consciousness across impossible distances. This is your ultimatum, Chen continued as the technical data finished downloading. You will surrender every individual involved in planning and executing the Haven's Rest massacre. You will pay reparations to the families of every victim. You will formally acknowledge human territorial claims in the Outer Rim, and you will sign a binding non-aggression pact that guarantees the safety of all human settlements. Zethara's form flickered between colors as conflicting emotions warred within his crystalline matrix. Fear, rage, pride, and dawning comprehension created chaotic patterns across his surface. And if we refuse? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Chen's response was chillingly matter-of-fact. Then we demonstrate what happens when a species makes the mistake of teaching humans that the galaxy is not a safe place for our children. Around the Velkari home system, 17 human ships hung in space like harbingers of judgment, their impossible technology making them untouchable, while their weapons held the power to unmake entire fleets. The Velkari Empire, supreme in their sector for 3,000 years, suddenly found themselves completely helpless before an enemy they had underestimated with catastrophic consequences. The choice was simple: surrender or face extinction. But Zethara's pride, the same arrogance that had led to the massacre at Haven's Rest, would not let him yield to what he still saw as inferior beings. He was about to make the last mistake of his life. When stars die high, Commander Zethara's crystalline form blazed with defiant crimson as he made the decision that would doom his entire species. Pride, the fatal flaw that had driven the Velkari to massacre innocent humans, now prevented him from seeing the abyss that yawned before his civilization. The Velkari Empire bows to no one, he declared, his transmission reaching every human ship in the system. We have ruled this sector for 3 millennia. We will not surrender to a species that was barely capable of interplanetary flight when our ancestors first achieved faster-than-light travel. Admiral Chen closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. She had hoped, despite everything, that the Valkyrie would choose survival over pride. The technical data they had provided should have made it clear that humanity now possessed weapons beyond conventional understanding. "Hi, Commander," she said one final time. "I urge you to reconsider. What we demonstrated here today was merely a fraction of our capabilities. Don't force us to show you the rest." Zethara's response was to order his remaining fleet to attack. Thousands of Valkyrie ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons creating a web of destructive energy that should have vaporized anything within the target zone. But the human ships simply weren't there anymore, having phased out of normal space-time the instant the attack began. "So be it," Chen whispered, then activated her command frequency to Earth. "Control, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Order Omega. Authorization code, Starfall 77 Alpha." Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Director Harrison received the transmission with a heavy heart. He had known this moment might come, but hoping it wouldn't have been easier than accepting its inevitability. His hands trembled slightly as he entered the final authorization codes. "Project Prometheus is now active," he announced to the gathered scientists and military personnel. "May God forgive us all." Across human space, hidden installations that had been disguised as research stations or mining facilities revealed their true purpose. Massive arrays of quantum manipulation devices, powered by the total energy output of entire star systems, began to align themselves with targets that were light years away. The Valkyrie had spent their existence mastering the technology of destruction within the known laws of physics. Humanity had learned to rewrite those laws entirely. On the bridge of the Endeavor, Admiral Chen stood before a holographic display showing the Valkyrie home system in perfect detail. Valkyra Prime, home to 18 billion crystalline beings, hung in space like a jewel, its surface gleaming with the light of cities that had stood for millennia. "Target confirmed," reported Lieutenant Commander Phillips from the weapons station. "Quantum resonance established with Valkyra's primary star. All safety protocols have been disengaged." Chen felt the weight of 18 billion lives pressing down on her conscience. But behind that weight stood the images of 57,000 human children, scientists, farmers, and dreamers who had been murdered simply for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. "The Valkyrie made their choice when they decided human lives were expendable," she said quietly. "Fire." What happened next would be recorded in the annals of galactic history as the most terrifying demonstration of power ever witnessed. The quantum manipulation arrays, working in perfect synchronization across multiple star systems, reached across the void and touched the fundamental forces that held the Valkyrie sun together. Nuclear fusion is a delicate balance between the stars, gravity trying to collapse it and the energy of fusion reactions pushing outward. Humanity had learned to disrupt that balance not through crude external force, but by altering the underlying mathematical constants that governed stellar physics. The Valkyrie star began to die, but not in any natural way. Instead of exploding in a supernova or gradually cooling over billions of years, it simply came apart like a machine whose components had forgotten how to work together. The nuclear fire at its heart flickered and went out as the strong force that held atomic nuclei together was locally rewritten. High Commander Zethara watched in horror as his sun dimmed and began to unravel. Stellar material drifted outward in impossible spirals, following geometric patterns that had never been seen in nature. The light that had warmed Valkyra Prime for 4 billion years grew cold and strange. "What have you done?" he transmitted, desperately to the human fleet. Chen's response was delivered in the same calm, professional tone she had used throughout the engagement. "We have demonstrated the price of genocide, High Commander. Your star will completely dissipate in approximately 6 hours. Your planets will freeze shortly after. We estimate total system evacuation would require approximately 48 hours with your current fleet capacity." The mathematics were simple and terrible. The Valkyrie had perhaps 300 ships capable of interstellar evacuation, each able to carry maybe 10,000 refugees. Even if they began immediately and worked with perfect efficiency, they could save less than 5% of their population. "This is madness," Zethara screamed. You're committing genocide on a scale that dwarfs anything in galactic history. No, Chen corrected quietly. We're responding to genocide with precise proportional force. You murdered every human in the Haven's Rest system. We are doing the same to you. The difference is that you chose this outcome even after we demonstrated our capabilities and offered you terms for surrender. As if to underscore her point, the 17 human ships that had been orbiting various Velkari worlds began to fade from sensors. But they weren't retreating. Instead, evacuation ships began appearing throughout the Velkari system, materializing near population centers and refugee camps. What are you doing now? Zethara demanded. Saving who we can, Chen replied. Unlike you, we don't murder civilians unnecessarily. Our evacuation ships will transport Velkari refugees to habitable worlds outside this system. We will provide temporary housing, food, and medical care until permanent settlements can be established. The High Commander's crystalline form flickered, with confusion. You're rescuing us after destroying our sun? We're rescuing your civilians, yes. They didn't choose to massacre Haven's Rest. They don't deserve to die for the crimes of their leadership. Chen's voice carried a note of infinite sadness. This is the difference between humans and Velkari, High Commander. We can be absolutely ruthless when necessary, but we don't confuse justice with genocide. The evacuation proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Human ships, their capacity expanded through quantum manipulation technology that folded space within their hulls, collected millions of Velkari refugees. They were transported to worlds that had been prepared in advance, complete with atmospheric processors and temporary cities designed for crystalline physiology. But the message was clear to every species monitoring the event. Humanity had just demonstrated the ability to reach across interstellar distances and casually murder stars themselves. The Velkari Empire, supreme in their sector for 3,000 years, had been reduced to scattered refugees in a matter of hours. High Commander Zethara was among the last to be evacuated, brought aboard the Endeavor along with his senior staff. As they were escorted to secure quarters, he found himself face to face with Admiral Chen in the ship's main corridor. Why? He asked, his voice barely a whisper through the translation matrix. You could have simply destroyed us all. Why show mercy to our civilians? Chen studied his crystalline form for a long moment before answering. Because that's what separates us from you, High Commander. You saw weakness in our preference for peace. You mistook our compassion for inability to defend ourselves. But our strength has always come from knowing when to be merciful and when to be absolutely ruthless. She gestured toward a view screen showing the dying Velkari sun. Its light, now dim and strange as fundamental forces continued to unravel. Your species ruled through fear and overwhelming force. You conquered 17 civilizations and made them kneel before your technological superiority. But you never learned the most important lesson about power. Which is? Zethara asked. That true strength doesn't come from the ability to destroy your enemies. It comes from the wisdom to know when destruction is necessary and when it isn't. Chen's expression was infinitely sad. We could have wiped out your entire species without a second thought. Instead, we chose to save millions of innocent lives while ensuring that your leadership could never again threaten human colonies. The former High Commander was silent for a long time, processing the implications. Finally, he spoke again. What happens now? To us, I mean, to the survivors. You'll be settled on worlds within human protected space, Chen explained. Your people will be free to rebuild their civilization, to pursue art and science and philosophy. But you'll do it under human oversight, and you'll do it with the understanding that aggressive expansion is no longer an option. And if we refuse? If some among my people decide to seek revenge? Chen's smile was gentle but carried an edge of absolute finality. High Commander, we just demonstrated that we can reach across the galaxy and turn off stars like light switches. Do you really think conventional military resistance would be effective against such capabilities? The truth settled over Zethara like a weight. The Velkari Empire was finished, not just as a military power but as an independent civilization. They would survive, their culture would continue, but they would do so at human sufferance. The species, that had once considered itself supreme in the galaxy, had become wards of the beings they had dismissed as inferior. News of the Velkari star's death spread through the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that connected every major civilization. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity possessed weapons that could casually violate the fundamental laws of physics. Within days, diplomatic communications began flooding human space. Species that had never bothered to acknowledge human territorial claims suddenly recognized them with enthusiasm. Trade offers poured in from civilizations that had previously considered humans too primitive for serious commerce. Military alliances were proposed by former enemies who now desperately wanted to ensure they remained on humanity's good side. The galactic balance of power had shifted overnight, not through conquest or gradual expansion, but through a single demonstration that redefined what was possible in warfare. Humanity had revealed itself as the apex predator of the galaxy, and every other species was scrambling to avoid becoming the next cautionary tale. Admiral Chen stood in her quarters aboard the Endeavor, looking out at the growing cloud of stellar debris that had once been the Velkari sun. In her hands, she held a datapad containing casualty reports from Haven's Rest, including a drawing that 8-year-old Emma Webb had made of alien butterflies she had discovered in the colony's gardens. "Admiral?" Captain Torres appeared in her doorway. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. President Williams wants a full debrief on Operation Starfall." Chen nodded without turning away from the view screen. "Tell them the mission was successful, Captain. The galaxy now understands that human lives are not expendable. And the other civilizations? The ones requesting diplomatic meetings?" "Schedule them," Chen replied quietly. "It's time for humanity to take its proper place in galactic affairs. We tried being the peaceful species content to tend our gardens and pursue our research, but some neighbors only understand strength." She turned away from the dying star, her expression resolute. "Let them come. Let them all come. We'll teach them the same lesson we taught the Velkari. Humans prefer peace, but we're very, very good at war." In the years that followed, historians would mark the destruction of the Velkari system as the moment humanity emerged as the dominant force in galactic civilization. Not through conquest or subjugation, but through the simple demonstration that there were some lines that could not be crossed without consequences that transcended all previous understanding of warfare. The galaxy had learned to fear human capabilities, but more importantly, it had learned to respect human restraint. The species that could casually murder stars chose instead to save refugees, to offer mercy to enemies, and to use their terrible power only when justice demanded it. And in quiet moments, when the politicians and generals weren't listening, old warriors like Admiral Chen would remember 57,000 names and know that their sacrifice had not been in vain. The galaxy was safer now, not because humanity was peaceful, but because every species understood exactly what happened to those who mistook human compassion for weakness. The stars themselves bore witness to that truth, and one star system that would never exist again served as an eternal reminder of the price of testing human resolve.